Hello, everyone. My name is Sophie Barron, founder and CEO of The Conversationalist. Welcome back to our TC Live panel series. It's my favorite time of the week where we get to talk about some really important issues facing Generation Z with some pretty incredible young leaders. So for those of you who are new to The Conversationalist, thank you so much for being here tonight. Thank you for being a part of our mission to unify the world one voice at a time. And if you like tonight's conversation, please join our online community where you can have conversations like this every single day, 24/7 with young people across the country. And tonight we have an awesome conversation planned for all of you. And to make tonight even better, for every single person who's viewing tonight's panel, we'll be donating $1 to Big Brothers Big Sisters, which is an incredible organization near and dear to our celebrity guest host's heart. So without further ado, just a reminder, this conversation is a bit political. We're a week out from the presidential election. How crazy is that? And tonight we are traversing the topic of healthcare in the United States. So just a reminder, we accept all viewpoints and opinions and perspectives here at TC. So at the end of the day, we're here to listen, learn, grow, empathize, and we are not here to change anyone's mind. So let's feel free to create a space in the live chat right here, right now, having awesome conversations together. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our incredible panelists for this evening so we can get the conversation started. So without further ado, we have Maya Siegel, we have Kudwi, we have Sarah Sahelic, we have Jacob Euler, we have Justin Truglio, we have Ameer Abdul, we have Zaire Turner, and we have Elle Kalish. Welcome to the stage. Thank you all so much for being here. How are you feeling?
Pretty good.
Yeah, really excited.
Good to be here.
So excited you all are here. And for everyone who's watching at home, if you want to learn more about our incredible panelists, look at the description below. These are some incredible Gen Z leaders, and we're so lucky to have them here with us tonight. And without further ado, I'm so excited to present our celebrity guest host for the evening, our guest moderator, the one, the only, best-selling author, leader, speaker, veteran, and all-around incredible human being, the one, the only Mike Johnson. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Sophie. I really appreciate it.
Of course, I'll let you take it away. Have an awesome conversation, and we'll be back soon.
Awesome, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with all of you leaders today. Again, for those that don't know, my name is Mike Johnson. I'm an author of a new book, Air Force veteran, or you may know me from a TV show called The Bachelorette. But more importantly, I truly care about our future of our country. Live around the world. Like I said, I'm a veteran as well. So this to me is a big topic, and I quite honestly can't wait to hear all of you guys speak. So without further ado, let's get into why we're here tonight. We're going to talk about healthcare and what it means to you. So Ameer, let's start with you. Why is healthcare important to you?
Well, first, thank you so much for moderating this. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you to the Conversationalist. It's always great to be part of the family here, and everyone else that's on this call. You guys are a phenomenal part. To that point, yeah, you know, I really strongly believe that healthcare is a human right, and I think that's kind of the base question that it starts out for me, right? Is do I believe that healthcare is a human right? And yes, I do, right? And looking into it, I believe our healthcare is a priority, right? Just as individuals, it's a priority. And looking into that, you see just how things have been going with COVID. And I think that's really come to show the importance of that. So healthcare in this country, it really is just a broken system. And the way we fix it, whether politically or financially, I think is up for debate. But I think one thing many of us can agree on is, or hopefully we can agree on, is that it's it's a right to at least have everybody have some quality healthcare. So that's extremely important to me. And looking at my family members, and I've had a lot of close family members who've gone through a lot. My cousin recently went through cancer treatment and beat cancer, thankfully. And if you're someone who doesn't have quality access to healthcare, then how can you get that sort of treatment? You won't be able to. And so looking just me as an individual and looking into my family, it's really close to my heart to see, how that's played out in my own life. So that's extremely important. And then just on a broad level, I think it should just be a right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you for that, Ameer. So you feel as if healthcare should be a given right to be a citizen of the United States. You spoke a little bit about, some personal things that healthcare has affected. Sarah, with that being said, how has healthcare affected you? And how do you feel about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. Also, really appreciate it and really happy to be here. Healthcare is important to me because it's something that I've had to witness, honestly, from a really young age. My dad passed away when I was very young from cancer. My mom struggles with multiple sclerosis, which is a physical disability. And just today, even, I watched her struggle with not being able to find a doctor that could accommodate and meet her needs. And I think that the inequality that presents itself within our healthcare system is really just in front of me every single day when I wake up in the morning. I look at, my family members, my parents, the people closest to me, and I wonder why a system failed them and why it continues to fail them every day. And for that reason, how could I not question it? How could I not feel like there must be something better out there? Yeah.
Wow. I love that you're speaking on that. I'm reading the comments right now. People are loving that you're speaking from the heart. I do as well. So, Elle, I want to go to you. With that being said, we've heard from Sarah and Ameer. How do you feel about healthcare in our country?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is like a really important question because I think when we talk about healthcare, I think our thought immediately goes to access, and instead the quality of care that we have in our healthcare system. And I've experienced this firsthand. I've had many different health things pop up in my life and within my family life, and I think that healthcare is one of those political issues that's always inherently personal. And I think that when we talk about expanding on healthcare access, we don't honestly ever think about what that means if that quality of care isn't that great. So to think about healthcare in the United States, I think about reforming our system to where we can make our quality of care better. Because we can expand access all we want, but at the end of the day, if our quality of care isn't there, then we're not expanding something that's meaningful. We want to expand patient experience. We want to expand better healthcare outcomes. And that means looking at health way more than just looking at it access, way more than looking at it as a system. That means looking at health and how it is in your every single day life, what you're consuming, where you live, all these different things that are all these different determinants in health that play into our system. So not only is our system broken, but more importantly, we took our system that has so many different levels and shrunk it down to be really, really small. And I think that we need to understand that reform doesn't just come with expanding healthcare access. That reform has to be thoughtful. And if we expand healthcare access without expanding our quality of care, we're actually causing more harm than good.
I love that. Zaire, I'm going to piggyback off of what Elle said, and just a little bit about me as the moderator. I grew up in Grand Prairie, Texas, Dallas, Texas, and the environment I had wasn't the best when it comes to healthcare and the treatment of such healthcare. We didn't have as much money growing up, and so it took a little bit longer to see doctors and things of that nature. So Zaire, based on what Elle said, that our healthcare is broken, how do you feel about that in regards to it being broken based on what Elle said?
Well, first of all, thank you again for being here. And what I want to say is I agreed a lot with what Elle was saying. And personally, I grew up in Paterson, New Jersey, which is a very low income town. So we didn't have that much access to proper healthcare over there. And I agree with Elle in terms of the system. We need to focus on the quality of the healthcare before the overall quantity, overall spreading it to everyone, because as she said, you can't focus on spreading something to the masses if you don't fix the internal issues within the system first. I don't know if that answered the question, but.
So Zaire, well, I'm going to, Justin, in regards to what Zaire was speaking on, focusing on the quality first before the quantity, how do you feel about that, Justin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really great question. And I think it's an awesome point that Elle brings up. And as someone that works in healthcare, it's something I do every day, and I learn more and more about every day. And I also can tell you it's a rapidly evolving system. But I think the problem in the US is that so many of us just don't understand how our healthcare system works, because it's incredibly complex. And, if you look at other countries in Europe or Canada where you have single payer systems, and both the structure of the healthcare systems as well as access to the healthcare systems as well as the quality provides, it's just extraordinarily different. It's not really comparable, and it's also a lot easier to understand and know how to work the system. And so I think a lot of the issues in the US stem from, not only patients not being able to access, quality healthcare, but not even knowing how the system works and not even knowing where the errors lie. And as someone that, has spent every day for the past couple of years, learning about the healthcare system every day, and learning about, commercial plans versus Medicare Advantage, Health Exchange, Medicaid, and what does it all mean and how does it impact the care that you get? And what does your patient out-of-pocket costs look like at the end of every month? And how does that change from one plan to another? It's really complex. And I think some of the issues lie with just, educating Americans more on what our healthcare system is, and, what different aspects of it really mean. And also, breaking down those complexities, because with those complexities come room for error. And to Elle's point, inhibit the ability of us to give quality care to, American citizens all around the country. So I really think that's kind of where the issue lies.
I love that, Justin. Thank you for saying that. I was an Air Force a soldier, I guess you could say. And I remember one time I was in Wales and I have asthma, and I got an asthma attack in Wales after riding horses. And I went to the hospital there. I was hospitalized. They gave me a nebulizer treatment. And I was surprised that I had no bill at the end. I was surprised that I didn't have to wait in the lobby to fill out paperwork. And so I really appreciate you speaking about other countries, and then also speaking about, Justin, how we're not educated in our country, America. So with that, Maya, I want to go to you. We have about 27.5 million Americans uninsured, or about 8% of the population. How do you feel that we can, based on what Justin was saying, educate the consumer, educate the population in a way that isn't biased, in a way that isn't for privatized industries?
Wow, that is definitely, a difficult question, and I'm not an expert, so, I'm not quite sure. I definitely believe that we do need to do a lot more on education. I think one way that could help is for doctors to break it down for people a little more during their sessions or during their appointments. I think that could really help because doctors are knowledgeable and you go to them because you trust them. So instead of, looking it up on Google, maybe you can just ask your provider, be honest with me. How does this work? How can I get the best care? What are my options? I think that would be a great place to start.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Maya, again, do you feel with Ameer and Sarah that healthcare should be a right as an American citizen?
I think that everybody should have access to the basic plan, and to Ella's point, of course quality matters, but I think for some people it's just anything. I think anything helps sometimes. I think it should be a right, yes, but I would say that the best healthcare in the world, that's a privilege that takes money, and that I think is the reality of it. But I do believe that everybody should have a basic plan and have access to that much so that they can talk to their doctors about and get more educated about what's right for them.
Love it. I'm going to mispronounce your name. My apologies. But you look the best. You got the tie on. I have Biller's background behind me, so I apologize in advance. Kudwai. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Kudwi.
Kudwai. My apologies. I knew you told me, but my apologies.
No, you're fine.
What about you? We've heard from Sarah. We've heard from Ameer. They speak from the heart. We've heard from Justin and Elle. They have their opinions as well. We got Zaire speaking about the quality. What are your thoughts? Do you feel that our healthcare is ideal in our country? And if so,
not. Oh,
of course
bad,
not. No, I want to hear from you. You guys are my future.
Yeah, I would say the ideal system would be the moral system. I wouldn't say that the the American healthcare industry right now is not the best at all. We can prove this by, I mean, we're here today discussing healthcare, and that proves that there's definite problems in the healthcare industry that exist today. I think a lot of people forget that this is a political situation, which entails a government putting laws and regulations and policies, changing how one interacts with one another. And that is the conglomerate of the healthcare industry, right? So we have to say, well, what's the moral system? Because we're already presupposing the moral system under the idea of politics here. So there has to be a proper justification of what is the standard to make these laws, regulations, and policies on the healthcare industry.
Nice, I like that. My friends and I have lots of conversations in regards to morality and capitalism. So, Jacob, I want to go to you and ask you in regards to healthcare. What are your thoughts on our current healthcare system? Do you feel that it's a moral right? Do you feel that it's something that the individual should do out of their own pocket? What are your thoughts on healthcare?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. It's great to have these conversations. You know, I think there's, especially right now, there's not a lot of, places in this country where we can have civil discourse on things that we may disagree on. And I think it's really important that we, have discussions like this. To your point, it's a very interesting question because, as some of my other colleagues here have mentioned, this issue is deeply personal in a way that not very many other issues really are, because we all want to be healthy and we all want our relatives to be healthy, and we want to know that if we get in a car accident that we'll be able to pay for a hospital, that we won't be saddled with a massive bill, right? And so I think that it's kind of a combination of the two. On the one hand, yes, I do very strongly believe that we need to create a system in which all can have health care. I don't know exactly if that would equate to quantifying it as a right per se, not because I believe that certain people shouldn't have health care. It's just, how exactly do we combine the idea of everyone needing healthcare with the idea that, there is very much an element to which, yes, we have in the Constitution the right to, not the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, and then built up upon in the Constitution the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But that's all very much based on personal responsibility and taking charge of your own life and your own actions and your own finances, And I don't think that our healthcare system is perfect. It is really the only industry that I've come across in America where you're buying something without knowing the quality of what you're buying or the price for it, And I think that's one of the biggest things that we need to do right now is really push price transparency. I was researching this whole mess really this afternoon, and I found that when you break down hospital bills, it's really outrageous. They charge you $15 per Tylenol pill, $53 per pair of surgical gloves used during treatment of the patient in question. I don't think that those things are worth that much money because I can just go to the store and get that for $5. And so I think, as I said, first and foremost, we need to really push price transparency in order to incentivize healthcare providers to compete with each other, to drive prices down so that more and more people can get access to healthcare, specifically quality healthcare, because that's how the free market works.
Nice. Well, thank you for speaking on that. Ameer, I want to piggyback and go back to you in regards to what we just heard. Someone like myself, I served the country, spent 8 years in the United States government. I now have free healthcare, which I am so blessed for. When I was your guys' age, I didn't understand the importance of it. But quite honestly, now that I've gone to the hospital and I've seen my bill 100% paid for and taken care of, for example, having a root canal, emergency root canal surgery, I paid the copay and that was it. And it was an amazing thing for me. So Ameer, do you feel, based on what Jacob said, that we need personal accountability?
Yeah, Jacob.
In regards to finances, in regards to healthcare?
Yeah, I appreciate the perspective there. I think you need personal accountability in anything you do, really, not just in healthcare. That's the truth. But when we look at healthcare and I worked with public health throughout the last 4 years just in college, and something I often saw was how a lot of communities are affected very differently than others just based on where they are. And what I saw was one community I worked closely with, the children's playground, for example, was on a lead field, right? They had higher lead levels than any other community. About almost 40% of that community died from cancer. That has nothing to do with accountability. That all comes down to really, those are things that are government controlled, building communities in specific areas. And if you're a low income family, depending on where you live, you're going to take what you get. And if you're in one of those situations where you're in that specific community, I don't know that there's much that you can do to save money or get out of that area, to protect your health. So it's things like that I take in consideration when I look into healthcare. And so to that point, yeah, that is extremely important. I think accountability, but it's that doesn't factor into this.
Thank you for that, Ameer. Sarah, I want to go to you. I remember coming to America, and I want to speak off of what Ameer said a bit, Sarah. I remember coming to America, and I was dating an English woman. She came to America with me. She was appalled at the fact that based on your location and the income that you have, dictates the type of quality of care that you get. So Sarah, to you, how do you feel if on either side that we can increase quality health care throughout the masses?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, I think that's what's difficult about determining the quality of care that somebody gets based on their income is a lot of people don't have an income or don't have a sufficient income for reasons that are entirely out of their control. So, like speaking from personal perspective, what do you do when your parents' income is solely based off of Social Security? That not only impacts the quality of care that they're able to receive as very sick individuals and members of society, but also that it impacts their children. And it turns into a cyclical problem. And I don't have an answer for you. I think that's a wonderful question, but I do think that looking at the individual experience of where is the human in healthcare, I think is the real question. Like, where are we forgetting the person when we're looking at some of our most vulnerable members of society and saying, you're going to get the basic, you're going to get the minimum, but what would life look like if they didn't just get the bare minimum? What would their opportunities look like if we were able to expand it?
Love that. Elle, I saw you shaking your head to what Sarah was just saying.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that this is all really important. So I'm going to kind of try and kind of loop in everyone's points here, coming from like Jacob to Ameer to Sarah, like within this next point. And I think first is starting with what you talked about, how depending on where you are, you can get different quality of care. And so I think that it's really important that we understand that the United States is a really big country. So when we talk about universal coverage that works in Europe, to understand that the people that live in Wisconsin are not at all the same people that live in Florida. And that means that they have different health comorbidities. That also means they have different volumes tons of people going to hospitals, going to health systems, and that changes things. And so that's important. And I think that we need to kind of leave that up to the states. I think that we need to encourage our states to have better state healthcare programs. I think like shout out Massachusetts for being the first state in the US to have universal healthcare coverage under Romney Care. And I think we understand that here, that we understand that the states can curate a health plan that helps their citizens, that's specific to the needs of that state. And that's something that we forget about a lot. And then secondly, I think that we have to understand that when we're here in the United States, we use a fee-for-service model, which essentially puts the reimbursement at the point of care. So if you walk into the ER and you have a stomach ache, and you leave the ER and you still have a stomach ache, you're still going to pay the same amount of money if you left the ER and didn't have a stomach ache anymore. And so there's alternative payment models like the value-based care model or the primary care first model, which Maya was talking about earlier, that incentivize the patient experience in higher quality of care and then link reimbursement to that. So if you went to the ER with a stomach ache and you left and you still had it, you would pay less money than if you went to the ER and no longer had a stomach ache. And that makes more sense because that makes the relationship with your doctor, with your healthcare, that makes you at the point of what you're paying for. And so I think we have to understand that when we're revolutionizing our healthcare system, that doesn't mean just expanding access, but we all live in different areas. We all have different needs. So our healthcare system should reflect that. And more importantly, our reimbursement model and what we're paying for healthcare should reflect that.
Love that, Elle. Love that response. Zaire, I would just piggyback off of what Elle said. She brought up a great point in regards to the states stepping up, quite honestly. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Not like the United States is a big country, obviously comprised of many states. And I think we should focus more on, for example, how Romney Care is in, which state was it? Massachusetts. I think we should be following along what Massachusetts is doing and try to do things like that more within the states, rather than try to find a universal, full country type of plan.
Like that. Guys, this has been great. I'm loving it, quite honestly. I can't wait for one of you to be my future president. Like to wrap it up because we're running short on time. Kudwat, have you learned anything in regards to today, or have you added anything, changed any perspective in any regards? Or I know that Elle brought up a great point in regards to America's huge. It really, really is. I haven't even been to all the states in America. Any thoughts onto what we've discussed tonight so far?
I'm quite familiar with all the references of like the NHS in Europe. The Romney Care as well and stuff like that. Why something? But I mean, I think this is a very heavy political issue, and I think we're taking granted the definition of rights and what rights entail. I would say rights is a social recognition of man's needs for survival, not to live, right, but for survival. And I think there is a lot of negation here when it comes to taking the idea of rights for granted. I wouldn't suppose that quality or just the general welfare of everybody is the primary rather the secondary. I would say the primary is the moral, because if we're going to disregard morals, then everybody would just be actively advocating for an immoral system for their standard of like what is good to them. And I'll show that by saying that everybody here has been saying like the idea of like healthcare is very, very personal. So it's like, kind of arbitrary and subjective a little bit.
So I want to ask you again, I want to challenge you. If you were the president, what would you do in regards to our healthcare?
Say it again.
If you were the president, if you were my president, what would you do in regards to healthcare?
I would deregulate. I would make sure that the rights of every individual that's working in the conglomerate, I can't say that word much, conglomerate of the healthcare industry, their rights would be protected, of course, because I think this is why I previously said that the American system is not much of an ideal at all. I mean, there's tons of rights not being protected whatsoever.
Nice. And Justin, any thoughts on what we discussed tonight in totality? We've heard some great points so far.
Yeah, I think a lot of great points, especially, what Elle said as far as, tailoring healthcare to patients and their needs based on demographics, I think was a really great point. I think the only other thing I would add, and something that I'm thinking about, is it's not just about offering those healthcare plans, but also thinking about what those patient responsibilities are. And we talked about accountability, but we think about Medicare, for example, as a really great resource for patients. Forgetting that those patients' out-of-pocket responsibility are $5,500 to $6,000 annually, and we see that greatly impact patient adherence. And even if patients do have access to medications, they don't take them because they can't afford them and they don't want to pay for them. And it's a really big problem. And I think, thinking about, patient affordability when we think about the types of healthcare plans that we're offering our patients is something that we really need to consider too. And I think I would just add that to the plethora of other really awesome points made today.
I was going to bring up financial. So Maya, I want to go to you. In regards to what everyone's discussed tonight, why do you feel that our healthcare is the way it is from a financial standpoint?
I think one reason is the lack of competition. So hopefully we can increase competition to lower costs and increase buyer power. I think another piece is, we aren't as educated as we could be, and so we're paying money that we don't need to be spending. I think those two are the main things that come to my mind at first.
Definitely. I want to leave this off with Sarah, Jacob, and Elle in regards to privatized companies for healthcare and the government. In our country, the reason so many people want to move to America is because it's freedom in regards to you can make it happen if you put in all your blood, sweat, and tears. If you're a privatized, like Martin Scorsese, I don't know if you guys remember him. He bought the pill for HIV and he ramped it up 10,000%. So we'll start with you, Sarah. How do you in government regulate privatized? I said prisons earlier. My apologies. How do you regulate privatized companies in regards to healthcare, and then making sure that it's available for the masses as well? We'll start with you, Sarah.
Yeah, of course. I think that privatized companies are very important. I don't think anything in my mind is telling me that we should try to make them not exist. But I think that this idea that certain citizens who are able to afford it for whatever reason they have been able to should have quality to better care in comparison to like the general population, which kind of gets the run-of-the-mill basic, which to be honest really isn't that high quality. I think that's where I get stuck. I don't have a problem with the idea of privatization. I have a problem with the fact that privatization means you get what, like, you almost are getting like what you've earned in a weird way, but like you haven't earned it at all. You've just been kind of dealt different circumstances, and maybe you've handled it differently than somebody else would have, but I don't think that makes you more or less worthy.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. Jacob, what about you in regards to, we have private healthcare. Let's say I'm Bill Gates, I can afford the best of the best in a private civilization or private world versus someone that, for example, I'm a mentor with the Big Brothers Big Sisters. My mentee, he has 3 other siblings and is a single mom. So there's 4 kids. How does that mom protect herself and her children versus me, Bill Gates? Jacob.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually want to start off here talking a little bit about my family's personal experiences with the healthcare system, because we've had a wide range of experiences with it, just because my family is so spread out from California to New York to Florida, all over the place. So we kind of get the whole package, warts and all. So like one of my grandfathers, for instance, he has a pre-Alzheimer's condition. He lives down in Florida. So, how Alzheimer's and pre-Alzheimer's dementia stuff works. You lose your memory. But he has a private health insurance plan, and that has allowed him to actually go to a Mayo Clinic down in Florida where he's getting some amazing treatment. So that's been really comforting, for me and for my whole family, just to know that at least we can stave that off a little bit longer. On the exact opposite end of the spectrum, another grandfather of mine actually was treated for cancer in prison at the end of his life, and really it was terrible because they couldn't. It was completely government funded. It was in a prison. There was nothing they could really do but make him comfortable. And another example that comes to mind is a former pastor of mine. He was my pastor, and then he moved to Ukraine as a missionary. And he came back to visit me and my family once, and we were actually talking about the healthcare system there in Ukraine, which is completely free for all citizens, right? But what he was saying was that, yes, according to law, it's free, but the doctors will routinely pressure all of their patients to give them gifts in return for their services. So it's not on the face of it, it doesn't look like you're paying anything, but you're actually paying a lot, especially in Ukraine, because let's see, I have the numbers right here. Yeah, the average Ukrainian doctor actually makes the equivalent of about $19 per hour, because when the state funds the entire healthcare system, that's so much money that they're going to have to pay for the cheapest, lowest quality stuff that they have available, because they're trying to pay for healthcare for everyone, and so we have to remember that doctors have families too that they have to provide for. And so we can't just cut and assume that doctors are just automatons, that they're just there just for us, because we're not the only people in that picture, So I think privatization would, and as I said before, price transparency would really actually drive prices down, drive quality up, and allow the doctors to still take care of their families,
Yes. It's funny you bring that up, Jacob. Again, talking about my personal experience, I was in the Air Force living in England, and my next door neighbor was an ER doctor, and he made $85,000 a year, US dollars. I thought they would make more because I know they do in America. So, Elle, I want to leave it with you before we wrap up. We just heard from Jacob, who spoke on. We just heard from Jacob, who spoke on what you were speaking about in regards to Massachusetts, the state level, making sure that we fund that. And Jacob feels that if we were to do that, we're taking a lot away from the doctors and how much they should be getting paid. So, Elle, I will leave the last words with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so these are all really great points. And I think that what's important to understand about the difference in Ukraine and the difference between Massachusetts did is that Massachusetts actually didn't raise taxes to be able to have universal healthcare coverage. And so I think that we have to understand that the healthcare model that we want in the United States doesn't exist yet. It's not in another country. We can't just copy and paste. We have to do other things. And I think that part of why our healthcare system here in the States is so good is because we have a awesome private sector that is willing to do anything. And I think we see this now too, the private sector is going to lead the way on the vaccine initiative, especially when we have a president that undermines our institutions. We can see here that the private sector is going to take that role over for us. And so I think that when we talk about fixing a system or fixing a market to realign our values, to get the health outputs that we actually want, that doesn't necessarily mean more regulations. That doesn't mean deprivatizing insurance, but that means re-incentivizing the market that we have for private institutions in the healthcare system to actually give us the outputs that we want. So if we want lower drug pricing, well, then maybe we should limit the patent process or take down the research and development costs. There's so many different things that we can do that actually alleviate this pressure that's put on the private sector that then drives price down while expanding coverage to more people, but still maintaining a private market, which allows us to have the awesome quality of care that we have here in the United States that you don't see other places. So we talk about privatization. I think it's just really important to understand that the healthcare system that we're looking for doesn't exist yet. So let's not throw away an entire system of things. Let's look at things and say, hey, what can we change? And the answer is we can change a lot. So I hope that, some of you guys in this conversation, Justin, I know you're in the healthcare industry, that we can continue to kind of push this conversation and get that to our leaders that are in Congress right now, because clearly the answers that they're pitching are not the answers that we need. So it's up to young people.
It is up to the young people. I want to say, as we close this, I've been watching the presidential debate from the beginning, and I can't stress this enough. Every last one of you guys have shown more respect for one another and not jumping over one another. So I genuinely, truly appreciate that. Me, someone looking at it, I take this incredibly serious. I've lived around the entire world, served my country. I've been poor, I've been wealthy. And so I have lots of different experiences and beliefs myself. And so I'm really appreciative to know that you guys are going to be the future of our country, if I don't beat you there first. And quite honestly, thank you. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the Conversationalist for letting us do this. Sophie.
Oh my goodness. What an incredible panel. Thank you all so much. I can't believe we're already at time. We could talk about this for hours. Thank you all so much for being here. Quickly, before we say goodbye to our panelists, I did want to just ask one quick question. Here at the Conversationalist, we're all about breaking open echo chambers and unifying the world. Zaire, how did tonight's conversation break open your echo chamber?
I haven't had many conversations about healthcare, so this was really interesting, just hearing a bunch of different perspectives about it. But just like one thing I wanted to say, just as like my final thoughts, is that I feel like as a society, humans, we've become very dependent on healthcare, and we forget that we're capable of doing a lot. We can do a lot for ourselves without healthcare. And I feel like it's really important to value yourself and to seek your own self help if you can. But obviously, people need healthcare.
Amazing. Thanks, Zaire. And quickly, Maya, how did tonight's conversation open your echo chamber?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, I haven't had, too many conversations about healthcare. I found it really enlightening what Elle was saying about, other ways we can change and challenge our system. I agree with her that we definitely don't need to take it away completely and start from scratch. I think we really need to identify where we can do better. So that was something I felt that was really good to hear. And then in terms of like last thoughts, I think that the only thought that I had that didn't really pop up was more about like preventative health and like preventative care. I think like we should focus on that more, because if we can, address them before they happen, it'll be a lot less costly for people. And that's something like in my personal life that I would have really loved more solutions in the beginning before, years pass and it became a lot more expensive.
Totally. Thank you, Maya. And Kadwi, any last words before we head out?
Do you want me to answer the same question?
I'd love to know, how did this conversation open your echo chamber to consider some new points?
I personally wouldn't say it didn't really, because I've heard many points of the same in differing scenarios. I'm quite aware of everybody's talking points and stuff like that. So I wouldn't really say it like opened up much of an echo chamber.
Okay, great. And is there one thing maybe you're taking away from tonight's conversation into the election next week? Yeah.
So into the election next week? I'm not going to really vote.
Okay,
so
no worries. I just wanted to give you all a last chance to speak. Mike, you are a phenomenal moderator. Thank you all so much for being here. Let's keep this conversation going. To anyone who wants to keep talking about healthcare in the US with other young people around the country, come hit up our after party in our community. Tasanka just popped the info into the chat. Join us. We're going to keep the convo going today and every day about these really important topics affecting our generation. So we have to say goodbye to our panelists, but thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Thank you all.
Have a great night. We'll talk to you soon.
Shout out to my grandparents watching.
Oh my goodness. Thank you all so much. Oh, so sad saying goodbye. Oh my goodness. Okay, Mike, before we head out, how are you feeling? How is the conversation for you?
I feel good. I kind of went off script because I wanted to ask questions that I care about, and in a very open form way. And I wish that the things that I think of now, I thought of when I was, the panel's ages. And I think it was an amazing thing, and I want to do it again. I'm able to with you guys.
It would be our honor. And I want to throw the last question to you that I just, threw out to our panelists. How did tonight's conversation maybe help you consider a new point of view and what are you taking from tonight into the election next week?
I'm taking, well, quite honestly, the first thing I'm taking is how to have a difference of opinion and still respect everyone, because that's a big thing that I do in regards to finding a leader, is something that can still respect me and still lead me without making me have an emotional charge to the way that they speak to me. So I respect every single individual on our panel tonight, because we did have differences of opinion. It sounded like every single individual, despite being a liberal or conservative, felt that all human beings in our country should have some form of healthcare. And I smile when I say that, because in other panels, people don't feel as such. And so I'm really appreciative that our Gen Z community feels that way.
I couldn't agree more. Mike, thank you so much for being here tonight. You got so much love in the chat. You are such a natural conversationalist. Thank you so much for helping us have this conversation. And before you go, share a little bit more about your book with us. How can we stay in touch with you, support all of the amazing work you're doing, and continue the conversation?
Definitely so. Reach out to me on social. I respond quite often. My roommate Connor says I'm too nice on social because I spend hours responding to people every single day. I would say MikeJohnsonSmile.com for everyone that want to get a copy of my book. I'll make sure I sign all of those books personally. If you go to Amazon, I'm not going to sign it personally, so don't be mad at me. And I would say to reach out to me just on Twitter or Instagram at Mike Johnson, Mike_.
Mike, thank you so much. I just am so grateful. Our whole community is so grateful for you. Thank you for being here tonight. I know you and I have to run to our exclusive meet and greet. We're so excited to keep the conversation going. But for anyone who's listening, don't let the conversation end here. The election is 1 week away. We've got to have more of these dialogues and discussions together so we can keep sharing all of these points of view. So Mike, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, we'll see you in a few seconds.
Yes.
Bye. Oh my goodness. Mike Johnson, everyone. Let's give it up for our incredible panelists. What an awesome discussion. I have to head out to go to our exclusive meet and greet with Mike. But let me say this. We have something really fun coming your way tomorrow on social with Mike. So stay tuned. Follow us on Instagram at The Conversationalist. We have an awesome announcement coming your way so we can keep the conversation going with Mike. And we're just so grateful for all of you being here. So let's keep the conversation going. Join our community. Text the word unify to 877-222-1119. We're going to go head to our after party, and we'll see you next week for another awesome conversation on Election Day. So stay tuned. I'm Sophie Barron. Thank you all so much for being a part of our mission to unify the world, one voice at a time. Bye.